Howdy, everybody. Welcome back to Urban Odyssey. And today, another edition of our show, recently titled The Matrix of Mendacity Masterclass. I am Urban, and let me welcome up my co host, Juxtaposition. Howdy.
Good afternoon, Josh. Good to see you.
Glad to have you here. Glad to be back for episode 8. Today, we have a lot of information to convey to people. Today, we're going to be tackling the subject. It's a huge subject, monster of a subject, one could argue. NGOs, corporations, think tanks, RAND Corporation, and the Stanford Institute. These are hydras. They are big monsters with many heads, many tentacles. You could call them a hydra, an octopus. And we do have a graphic to show you shortly. But why don't you go ahead and give us just a brief, simple explanation? What are these with no coding, no BS, nothing? What are these institutes about?
Human husbandry.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
fascism. And fascism.
Well,
Because,
they're Swiss bank authority. They're departments of Swiss banks.
yeah,
That's want me to cut to the chase. It's centralized world governance, central governance, promulgated out of Geneva, Switzerland, and funded by banks in Basel, Switzerland, Zurich, and Zug. And so centralized finance, centralized military supreme command, again in Geneva, with the United Nations and NATO. And also in Geneva, we have bank authority in the form of the World Bank Group and the International Monetary Fund. So no matter which direction you look in Switzerland, besides finding a cuckoo clock, you're going to find a private bank. Retail private banking is headquartered in Zurich, but the central bank for all central banks of all the world, which would be Ukraine, Communist China, Socialist Russia, are found in Basel, Switzerland, home to Johann Sutter. Remember John Sutter? He discovered gold in California, which at that time was referred to as New Helvetia, which means New Switzerland. So in other words, a Swiss national discovered gold in California in January 1848, or at least that's when he told his Mormon cohort to print it up in the newspaper and ring the dinner bell so that there'd be a big migration of 1 million people out to California way. Then they could build out the RAND Corporation, Stanford Research Institute International, McDonnell Douglas, Northrop, General Dynamics, TRW, Hughes Space and Communication Satellites, Pepperdine University, Loyola Marymount, Silicon Beach in Santa Monica, Silicon Beach, and then Silicon Valley in the orchards of Santa Clara County, known as San Jose, Sunnyvale, Mountain View. Those were orchards turned into switchboard, circuit board, silicon chips, and today Smart Dust, TerraSwarm, Corey Hall in UC Berkeley, and Jennifer Doudna in CRISPR therapeutic DNA injury, which she refers to as gene editing, when she manipulates your DNA, your bone marrow, and your skin, and the cellular level, and hooks you up to the cloud. So you're a walking antenna, a walking hard drive, which is done in Berkeley, California, and in Boston and Zug, Switzerland. And and also in San Francisco at Mission Bay, at University of California, San Francisco, there is a CRISPR therapeutics office there. There are 4. They're in London, England, they're in Zug, they're in Boston, and they're in San Francisco, but the boss has a laboratory at UC Berkeley off Hearst Avenue on Berkeley Way. I kid you not, Josh. Does that answer your question that it's really just departments and divisions, tentacles of an octopus, where you have a centralized HAL 9000 brain referred to as our octopus? Does that help?
Well, it does. And what I want to convey clearly before we get started, because we do have some visuals for everybody, but a lot of people want to go back and forth about the red party or the blue party, but nobody ever talks about these organizations. They're never mentioned, they're never brought up. Nobody knows, very few people know they exist unless you actually, see them in a book or you read something. But these organizations, there are so many of them, but what you will find is that their boards of directors all live next to each other. They are all advisors to each other. They are all consulting, and I do the air quotes there, consulting, because I can consult on anything. Like right now, you and I are consulting with the audience. So and you could bill somebody for that, but this is just as much of a gray area as intelligence work. And for the
Well,
most part, these
remember
people
from
rule.
one of my favorite banking films, The International.
Mhm.
In the film, they have the general counsel lawyer for this Swiss bank, allegedly in Luxembourg and or Berlin. They want you to be prepped to understand that the lawyer stipulates to the policeman, essentially an Interpol policeman, who is demanding justice. He goes, I want justice. And he says, no, justice is not possible. The very system that you serve will guarantee that there will never be justice. The very system that you serve that employs you. And he says, well, I don't understand. He goes, don't you understand? The world operates between the black and gray latitudes. And that is where the RAND Corporation and the Stanford Research Institute International and all the other dozens of think tanks like Aspen Institute, Claremont Institute, Brookings Institute, Hoover Institute, the Council for Foreign Relations, Bilderbergs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the Brain Project, the Asian Institute, they all function in under the umbrella of nonprofit, no stockholders, no audit. There's no public transparency of their finances or their projects, or you cannot read their board minutes, for example. There may be a transcript, but it's not publicly available for you to read. So you don't know what they're doing. It's completely concealed in the shadows of between the black and gray latitudes that decides human husbandry, eugenics, and anthropology, global governance of this Hunger Game farm plantation in which we find ourselves living on.
That's a great way to put it. Exactly, because if you are, for instance, if you're dealing in these locations or these subjects, and you're a government organization, then you would have certain restrictions. But then when you move it to the private sector, into corporations or LLCs and I have a whole thing on foundations. That's a whole tax-free foundation. When you move it into that, you don't have to deal with all of the rules as much. I mean, they're all
No.
rules, but not on the same level. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up some of the visuals here, and we can start to show people. Today, we're going to focus on two. We're going to focus on the Stanford Research Institute International. They're international, and then we have the RAND Corporation. First will be the Stanford Research Institute. So let me go ahead and bring all that up and get it going. There we go. Oh, yeah. So the first graphic here is the huge Hydra. And this is just, I mean, a handful of them. There are way more than this, but all of these corporations function together, and they are just little offshoots of each other, because where you find one, it's almost 100% guarantee you will find someone who works at the other, someone who has been at the other, someone who is consulting with the other, and if that all else fails, they are living in the same neighborhood, or their building is across the street. It's wild when you really look at it. It really is.
Yeah, we have some
So
examples. We'll talk about some specific examples of what you're generally describing there, Josh.
mhm. Yeah, so the first is the Stanford Research Institute International, and you did say this one was founded first, correct?
Yeah, 1946.
Okay, so this one was founded in 1946. I know it's here. I will. If you can see the bottom, we've got the address. Stanford Research HQ is across the street from where Aaron Valenti worked, Dean
Yeah,
Jacobson, and J.J. Cardwell.
yeah, she worked at Summit Partners, which is an investment company. It's on Middlefield Road, but you should know that the Stanford Research Institute's on Ravenswood Avenue, which is across the street. In other words, the Stanford Research Institute is a fairly large campus and numerous buildings, and they're on the corner of Ravenswood Avenue and Middlefield Road. And on Midfield Road, across the street from this front door, is Summit Partners, where J.J. Cardwell was a senior manager, and Dean Jacobson was at that time a middle manager, and Erin Valente was a new graduate from Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and this was her first real job out of university, and she worked there for over 4 years. I think she worked there 6 years. Anyway, but you should know that a baseball throw away from where Aaron Valente was trained by J.J. Cardwell and Dean Jacobson, two men that she spent time with 12 hours before her death. She had dinner with J.J. Cardwell on Sunday night. She met after lunch on Monday afternoon at 1:30 with Dean Jacobson, and then 7 hours later, she disappeared for 5 days, then reappeared like Houdini, dead as a doornail at a 666 address on Bowes Lane, 6615 Bowes Lane, which is a 999, dead as a doornail in the back of her Nissan Murano car. You should know that 1 block away from this address here at Stanford Research Institute and essentially Summit Partners, where Aaron was trained, 1 block from this location is where Stanley Wojcinski lived, and he was the department head for Stanford University of Physics Department, the Physics Department head, and his home had a garage, and in that garage they had 2 PhD students from Stanford, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, who invented Google in the garage where Stanley Wojcinski, who's a professor of physics, let them use the garage for, I think, $400 a month. And they built $1 trillion company in the garage. And then Stanley's daughter, Anne, married Sergey Brin. The company went public, and voila, billions are created. Stanley laughing all the way to the bank because his daughter just hit the jackpot in his garage that really belongs to Stanford. And this is at 232 Margarita Avenue, which is near Ravenswood Avenue and right off Middlefield Road, where Summit Partners is. You should know that Stanley Wojcinski also had another job for the Department of Energy to run the linear accelerator underground 1-mile tunnel under Sand Hill Road on the Stanford campus. So he's collecting multiple paychecks. One, he's an employee, a high-paid department head employee for the Department of Energy, and the other, he's getting a high paycheck from Stanford to be a department head of physics. His daughter has just hit the jackpot with Google. He's collecting rent from Sergey Brin and Larry Page to rent the garage. And he undoubtedly is getting consulting fees and board meeting stipends. So he hasn't got a care in the world, right? I mean, how can you miss on Middlefield Road?
Yeah, and this is all going on
1 block of each other.
That's just what you know off the top of your head. I mean, I guarantee you.
Well, if you want to go 2 blocks away, then you're at Sand Hill Road. Sand Hill Road's about 2 blocks away. And now you have Kleiner Perkins, Sequoia Capital, all multiple billionaire banker partners, KKR Excel, Jim Breyer Capital, Angela Chow's mysterious death. We have a lot of dead people, and we have a lot of billionaire bankers. And then you have Atherton, and you have Valparaiso, and you have Mark Zuckerberg and Larry Ellison, and all, Joe LeCobe and Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors. You have entertainers, sporting entertainers, 49er coaches, and you have Roman circuses, banking, science, supreme commanders of NATO forces like Jim Mattis. And they're all living in Atherton near Middlefield Road and Sand Hill Road and El Camino Real, the King's Highway, adjacent to Stanford University. Back to you, Josh.
That's just crazy. So we go 2 blocks away, and then we have all kinds of other stuff. That all of this going on so close to each other. And I'm going to, whenever the posts and stuff gets put out for this, I'm going to link all of the episodes that we've done, because we did a whole episode on the Aaron Valenti case. I was a part of that one, and some of the other ones you have
You have
done.
this dynamic at Cal Berkeley because you have Daniel Ellsberg living above Site 100 and the Department of Energy's weapon lab off Grizzly Peak Boulevard. That's where Daniel Ellsberg breathed his last breath and died in Kensington, which is right above where Ernest Lawrence, who created the cyclotron machine at Cal Berkeley, he's a Yale alum who was a professor at Berkeley and the first manager of the Lawrence Livermore Weapons Lab. He died close to where Daniel Ellsberg died. Daniel Ellsberg was a longtime employee of the RAND Corporation. He leaked the Pentagon Papers, allegedly. I think it was a fake out. He's a fake whistleblower. He leaked all the information that was publicly known already. And the Phoenix program, which was concealed, Daniel Ellsberg did not leak any files regarding the Phoenix program, which had been in existence for a minimum of 3 years at the time that he was operating the infamous photocopy machine in Santa Monica. But you have the same thing. You got Jennifer Doudna, Joy Wise, Christopher Pister, his father, who was a chancellor of UC Systems. He was a chancellor within various universities within the 9 campus systems. And you have, it's always the family, the parents, the grandparents, and the children who get the jobs at the RAND Corporation, the SRII, and at MIT. And you'll see a unholy alliance between Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which will bring Joy Weiss to Berkeley, and Harvard, which brought Jennifer Doudna to Berkeley, and Daniel Ellsberg to Berkeley, and Henry Kissinger to Palo Alto, the Hoover Institute, and Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, where both George Shultz and Henry Kissinger were counselors to Elizabeth Holmes, yet their names were never mentioned in her criminal federal case. Is that you'll see Daniel Ellsberg, Henry Kissinger, George Shultz of Princeton. You'll see Princeton, Yale, MIT, Harvard, Berkeley, and UCLA and Stanford with positions on the RAND Corporation or consulting arrangements with both the RAND Corporation and SRII. So you have Stanford and the RAND Corporation are essentially interlocking board of directors with Harvard, Yale, MIT, Princeton, Columbia University, UC Berkeley, UCLA, UC San Francisco, UC Systems. Back to you, Josh.
Yeah, and the one thing, again, I'll say this, and I'll probably say it again before the episode ends, but this is almost a bloodline thing. There is no room for participation. This is not something you can go and participate in. There's no democratic principles in any of these institutes, and you're lucky if you make it into one of these and you're not born into a bloodline, because we've already established that these people's.
You have to have a connection. They're not going to let outsiders in to this occult, this temple, the temple worship of fascism and human augmentation, because it's groupthink, it's hive mentality. They all believe in COVID. They all believe in mandatory vaccines. They all believe in Agenda 2030. They all believe in one world governance out of Geneva, Switzerland. And they're all following their Omerta code of silence. They're happy to lie to the public, to bald-faced lie to the public. And then within their temple of worship, their satanic worship, they're all obedient drones with hive mentality. And there's no dissent. There's 100% agreement, universal thinking.
This right here is what came to mind. It says fact checkers, but at the same time, the people who are telling them what the facts are, people who are enamored with their own sets of biases, prejudices, agendas, presuppositions, and blind spots. Fact checkers or think tanks are individuals who use the political, religious, and philosophical lenses which frame their way of engaging questions of facticity in a manner that tips the hermeneutical scales in their own favor when applied to such questions. So this is very dogmatic, very much, because these are think tanks, but at the end of the day, whatever they think up is the right answer. It's always the right answer because they are have all this money and they have all these people who have got all these, and we're gonna get into that in a moment. All of these people who are on the boards.
Heard follow the science. That
Yeah.
is secret code for follow the dogma, obey your orders, follow your commands, obey directives, obey authority. That's what follow the science means, because there is no science in play here. None. There's no such thing as safe and effective. There's no such thing as there's no such thing as a democratic concept of disagreement. That you have no voice. You can make noise, but you have no voice. There's no influence. You will never be given a ballot with choices. It's really obedience ritual to vote, is that you believe in a system that doesn't exist. You believe in a country that doesn't exist. You have no country. You pledge allegiance to a 13-stripe unity amongst Masons Swiss flag, but you wrongly think that you're in a sovereign nation that's totally bankrupt with over $70 trillion worth of debt that it's never going to pay back to Switzerland. But that's okay. It's a Hunger Game colony. It's part of the imperial colonial Swiss bank-controlled Hunger Game system, which we refer to as colonialism. In California, we call it colonialism because the Spanish subjugated the native people using the bell, for whom the bell tolls, a bell tower, and barracks and bayonets. They used barracks, bayonets, and bells to subjugate and either run the Indians off the property, kill them, or baptize them into the Catholic religion under the guise of Father Ybarosera. And this gave rise to the Stanford campus, where they booted out the Ohlone tribe. And it gave rise to UC Berkeley, or the College of California is what it was called, once they booted out the Indians there and got rid of the Peralta family and disenfranchised the ranchers who stole the land from the Indians. They ended up having the land stolen from them by the Union Army with the the Mexican-American pseudo war of 18 months long. All right. Well, anyway, Josh, you have a situation here where, it's just one mendacity after the other, that California history is the history of Swiss bank, gold rush, reset to develop the state of California and the water rights. And they stole water from Nevada and they stole the gold and they stole the silver from Nevada, from Virginia City, Nevada, to be specific. They stole the minerals, they stole the gold, they stole the silver, they stole the water, and then they built Silicon Valley, Silicon Beach, and developed the military-industrial complex, which is best illustrated by the RAND Corporation and Stanford Research Institute and the board of directors, who were all indoctrinated at Harvard and MIT, Princeton, Yale, and Stanford. Back to you, Josh.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's get into it. Let's see who's first on the list. First, Mr. David Motley. Let's see what he does. He is the chairman of the board at the Stanford Research Institute, the co-founder, general partner at BTN Ventures, just venture capital, I guess.
Right.
BTN Ventures.
So
first, yeah, that's first. Then we have Stefan Heck, who is the CEO and founder of Nalto. Do you know what Nalto is?
I don't.
I don't know.
But it's criminal enterprise would be my guess. Something felonious.
Right. Next, Mr. Charles Mathis. He is a Fortune 500 CFO.
Yeah, because they don't want to put him down on one company. He must have been a job hopper for the big 500.
Yeah.
So he's a money guy.
Yes. Next up, we have Marshall Moore. who is the EVP and CFO retired, Intuitive Surgical. So, Intuitive Surgical, medical company.
Medicine,
Yeah, there it is.
otherwise known as e-medicine.
E-medicine. Okay. Ellen Ochua. She is a veteran astronaut,
Okay,
director of
right off
NASA.
the bat, you know she's fake because there's no such thing as an astronaut.
Yeah, director of NASA Johnson Space Center, retired. They're all retired. This is their
Good,
retirement.
good, because she shouldn't be employed by them anyway. Go ahead.
Next, we have David Parikh, who is the Chief Executive Officer, SRI, of
Right.
Stanford Research Institute.
He looks pretty clueless. He's the
Yeah,
young,
he's got.
doesn't know anything.
Hold
He's
up, I gotta
perfect.
see this.
He's perfect to be the president. He
Let's
doesn't
see.
know anything. He's perfect because he's clueless.
The smile got me right there.
Right. He doesn't know
Yeah.
what's going on. Just take the money and go to the meeting.
Okay. Let's see.
Here's
Ellen M. Paulikowski. She is a general, a retired general of the U.S. Air Force. So now we have a military general who's on the board of the Stanford
yeah,
Research Institute.
medicine and military.
Uh,
What could possibly go wrong? Go on. Here we got
Ren
he's another.
Rengaranjan,
So he's banking, private banking, secret banking, secret banking.
Eagle Tree Capital. Yep, another capital venture firm.
Switzerland, but we're not going to say that. Go ahead. And we got this
Deborah Ryan.
person.
There it is, Meta Markets. And
I mean, she's in the
didn't.
death business.
Yes, that's why I wanted to highlight that, because we know what meta markets are.
Yeah, she's
They
in
are,
the augmentation zombie apocalypse.
yeah, meta markets. I wonder if that has to do with all of this sport, like the betting and the gamification
Well,
of everything.
tokenization. She's in the
hmm
tokenization of Internet of everything.
hmm I'm going to find more information on meta markets. Maybe do some an article on that later this week, because I'm curious. And then this guy is a little bit of a.
He's a money
We've
guy
got.
for Lockheed Martin.
What did you say? Say that again.
He's the chief financial officer, or pardon me, chief technology officer, CTO, formerly of Lockheed Martin, which is the general contractor for all technical surveillance worldwide. So this is an important job, to be the CTO of spying on every human being on the planet. And he's on the board of directors of SRII.
Yeah, I mean, this guy has got a loaded resume. He's been in Lockheed, which makes bombs and makes a lot of money selling death.
Main job at Lockheed is spying. They're in the surveillance business. They
Oh,
spy.
well.
That's what the SR-71 was. U-2 spy satellites. They get paid a consulting fee from TRW, from Hughes Space and Communications, from Raytheon Missile Guidance, Bell Nokia Labs, Northrop, General Dynamics, all pays Lockheed to oversee the application of the weapons created by all weapons manufacturers in the world in respect to surveilling moving creatures on the planet. All moving creatures are Lockheed is responsible for knowing every blade of grass that moves, everything that moves on the planet's surface. Lockheed is paid as the general contractor. They in turn subcontract help back out, but they get paid on everybody. So this is the universal control mechanism for NATO, is Lockheed. Okay, so it's not a surprise that Gary Francis Powers was killed, and he was he was a U-2 spy pilot, and it's not a surprise that the DB Cooper hijacker worked for Lockheed and flew the U-2 spy plane in Vietnam, over Laos and Vietnam. It wouldn't be a surprise. He knows how parachutes work, how bombs work, how you run 727 planes with the gear landing down and the flaps turned down, and you maintain 10,000 feet of flight while I can parachute out the back. Lockheed spy pilots are trained how to do that. So if you wanted to go hijack an airplane on the Thanksgiving Day weekend, when the banks are closing and you ask for 200,000 in cash, that would happen if you work for Lockheed. And Lockheed already told the bank a month ahead of time, hey, have 200 grand available in case somebody asks you. So
Right.
that would be Lockheed. And that's what this knucklehead, he's on the board of directors of
I mean,
Stanford Research Institute, and he was in charge of the technology of spying on all people in the world. I mean,
I'll
what
go
could
ahead and
possibly go wrong with this unholy alliance of board members? Going back to you.
here. I'll go ahead and read this because I know it's cut off at the bottom. Dr. Stephen H. Walker is Vice President and the Chief Technology Officer of the Lockheed Martin Corporation, where he is responsible for the company technology strategy, global research, mission development, and emerging operations technologies. He assumed the role in January of 2020, and under his direction, the organization is shaping the next era of operating capability and innovation for Lockheed Martin. As the primary liaison to the U.S. and international science and technology community, he manages strategic partnerships with government, industry, and academia to ensure the maturation and deployment of cutting edge technologies. There's a lot of coded language, soft language there.
Right.
So, for instance, let's see, company technology strategy, global research, mission development, and emerging operations technologies. That's a whole lot of words to say, basically enslavement techniques and
Right.
any way to accomplish that.
Yeah, pacification and
Let's see, what
control,
else do we got?
we which we know is Agenda 2030. Go ahead.
Yeah, we got operational capability, which means using, for instance, the 6G white paper that we read from 2020, 5 years ago when this guy was appointed. Operational capability is basically finding all of these new technologies that would seem alien to people who don't have the words. Is really the words, because these words are all these acronyms and mems and memos. It's just like people don't know how to like, what is that, and if you're talking about that, then people are just not going to think anymore on it. They're just going to keep going on about their day. And all the while, if you read the papers about their operational capabilities, well, one of them's got nano cameras on the guy's wall. The guy's beanbag chair is a wireless link, and he's sitting at his computer and the whole room is spying on him. And so I guess that's operational capability.
That's Lockheed Martin and Raytheon
Let's
Missile
see.
Guidance as one of their
Manage partnerships.
right.
I like strategic partnerships with government industry. What do you think? What is a strategic partnership?
Unholy Alliance.
That's it. There you go. I like that. Strategic partnership is unholy alliance.
Right.
There you go. Okay, let's move on. Now we're on to the RAND Corporation, and they've got two HQs, headquarters. This one is in Santa Monica, California. The
Well,
address,
this
because
is
it's cut
their
off, I know.
headquarters. This is their only headquarters. They have 13
One's
offices
a subsidiary.
their HQ, and they have a Hydra head. They created a school of public policy in New Orleans, which I guess you could say that has its own headquarters in New Orleans, Louisiana. But this is Santa Monica. This is 1 block away from the Santa Monica Pier. This is a block away from Mariel Hemingway's murder. Chris Penn, Sean Penn's younger brother, his murder. It's 1 mile from William Holden's murder. This is half a block to Natalie Wood's Splendor docking. This is 1 block away from Dennis Wilson's drowning at Marina del Rey. This is half a block to the Church of Synanon, which is right on the beach, Casa del Mar. And this is the headquarters this is where Daniel Ellsberg photocopied the Pentagon Papers in this building here. The address is 1776 Main Street.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know it's cut off. I'll have to remember that next time I make a slideshow that our little pictures are there. And then this one is their little building in Pittsburgh. That's 4570 Fifth Avenue.
But they have offices in Boston and London and, like I said, New Orleans and in Australia also. They're international.
Right there.
They have offices in Switzerland also.
Melon.
So they're everywhere.
Mm.
They're everywhere where the enemy is headquartered. Here's your token um, Harvard indoctrinated clone journalist, fake journalist. She's a fake journalist. I want to repeat. She's like Seymour Hersh. She's like Andrea Mitchell. She's fake. She's like Diane Sawyer. Diane Sawyer is fake. Mike Wallace, he's fake. Chris Wallace, his son, he's fake. Rachel Madcow, who graduated from Stanford, she's fake. This is she's about the same age as her. Really, she goes by Soledad O'Brien, but she's Maria de la Soledad Teresa O'Brien, and she's from Washington D.C. She was born in New York. She's African Cuban and Irish Scot through her father, and she's 100% CIA military intelligence fake journalist. And she's on the board of directors of the RAND Corporation, knowing nothing about weaponry or military tactics. But who better than to put an anchor of CNN and NBC and CNBC on the board of directors of the RAND so that all the other fake journalists can feel pride that they have one of their own on a human husbandry board called RAND, and that she'll be a whistleblower. She's not going to blow the whistle on anything. She's going to take the money. She's going to live in a nice, comfortable home. She's 59 years old. She's one of the youngest people on the board. She's a fake journalist. Back to you, Josh.
Yeah, I appreciate the background there. It is interesting when you see that they've got journalists that they're bringing in, especially CNN. That's great. That is CNN. But this is probably one of the main ways that I would guess that they're able to get all of the news media on the same page, and you have them. For instance, you have all of those clips that they put them on top of each other, and they're saying the exact same thing, like the literally the exact same thing. And I'm guessing that it's coming from just one of these NGOs. Doesn't have to be RAND. It could be any of them. But
Right. Well, I think they all get their email delivered from
exactly.
Geneva, from the
Yeah.
United Nations. So they are parakeets. They rinse and repeat what the World Economic Forum and the various agencies of the United Nations, the World Bank, or the International Telecommunications Union, or CERN, or the World Bank, World Hunger. It all goes together. The WHO, World Health Organization, whatever the United Nations universal message is, it is then distributed out to these clones like Maria de la Soledad Teresa O'Brien, who's complete clown. She's a complete clown. I fell for the potato in my tailpipe with her. So I put her in the same category as Daniel Ellsberg and Victor Davis Hanson and Jeffrey Sachs and Anthony Napolitano and Andrea Mitchell and Rachel Madcow and Geraldo Rivera and Barbara Walters, which is I put them at the bottom of the toilet being flushed into the sewer. In other words, you should not spend 1 nanosecond of your time with these circus clowns who are repeating what they are sent from Geneva, Switzerland. Just ignore them or delete them. Back to you,
Absolutely.
Josh.
Yeah, and here are the two. First, we're going to look at Daniel Ellsberg, who you've already mentioned a little bit about.
And
Daniel
that's
Ellsberg.
where Dad went to school. She was indoctrinated exactly how Daniel Ellsberg and Henry Kissinger were in Cambridge, Massachusetts at Harvard. Go on.
Absolutely. I'll read this. Daniel Ellsberg was born in Chicago, Illinois on April 7th, 1931, the son of Harry and Adele Charsky Ellsberg. His parents were Ashkenazi Jews who had converted to Christian Science, and he was raised as a Christian Scientist. I didn't never heard of that. In
Yeah.
2008, Ellsberg told a journalist that his parents considered the family Jewish, but not in religion. Ellsberg began working as a strategic analyst at the RAND Corporation for the summer of 1958 and then permanently in 1959. He concentrated on nuclear strategy, working with leading strategists such as Herman Kahn and challenging the existing plans of the United States National Security Council and Strategic Air Command. Ellsberg completed a PhD in economics from Harvard in 1962. His dissertation on decision theory was based on a set of thought experiments that showed that decisions under conditions of uncertainty or ambiguity generally may not be consistent with the well-defined subjective probabilities. Now known as the Ellsberg paradox, it formed the basis of a large literature that has developed since the 1980s, including approaches such as the Choquet expected utility and information gap decision theory. And then we've got a picture of him right there.
Right. He's also a supporter of gay rights and transgenders, like Bradley Manning. Here he is with his aloha pink gay necklace for gay pride parade. And he's supporting the ambiguity of Bradley Manning because everybody knows that Daniel Ellsberg is a fake whistleblower. And does he really support gay rights? I sincerely doubt it. I think this is Daniel Ellsberg's job until death. He's a crisis actor, fake whistleblower. He is a disgrace from Harvard University. He's a complete disgrace. And here he is, probably not supporting Bradley Manning. It's just, this is what they told him his job was that day. Do a photo op with a Bradley Manning photo. And then let's go on because there's more gay pride. The colors here, bring the troops home in front of the White House. This is all just staged crisis events. He's a complete phony fraud, Daniel Ellsberg. And then all the fake journalists can comment on Daniel Ellsberg, the fake whistleblower, and glorify him in his death and celebrate him for the next 1,000 years, along with Henry Kissinger.
Heinz. He's a Heinz Kissinger.
Yeah, Heinz ketchup.
Yeah. Kissinger earned his Bachelor of Arts, summa cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa, in political science from Harvard College in 1950, where he lived in Adams House and studied under William Yandell Elliott. His senior undergraduate thesis, titled The Meaning of History, Reflections on Spengler, Toynbee, and Kant, was over 400 pages long and provoked Harvard's current cap on the length of undergraduate thesis, which is 35,000 words. He earned his Master of Arts and Doctor of Philosophy at Harvard University in 1951 and 1954, respectively. In 1952, while still a graduate student at Harvard, he served as a consultant to the director of the Psychological Strategy Board and founded a magazine, Confluence. At that time, he sought to work as a spy for the FBI, and that rhymed. There he is with Trump with his little hand signal.
Yeah, and Donald Trumpster. In fact, he's with every president.
There he is.
There is with Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan's got his cowboy clothes, and there's Henry Kissinger wearing his Goldman and Sachs banking clothes. And who else we got him with? Oh, Sleepy Joe. Sleepy Joe Biden.
They're awful close.
Kissinger. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. We're in the same club.
Absolutely. There he is.
The thoughtful, pensive, fraud Henry Kissinger, a consultant for the RAND Corporation.
Oh boy, in June 1945, Kissinger was made commandant of the Bensheim Metro CIC detachment, Bergstrap, I don't know how to say it, District of Hesse, right, with responsibility for denazification of the district, which is ironic because he's a Nazi. Although he possessed absolute authority and powers of arrest, Kissinger took care to avoid abuses against the local population by his command. Things that didn't happen for a million.
Or they would have slit his throat. Go ahead.
Yeah. Kissinger recalled that his experience in the army made me feel like an American. Okay.
Right. But you should know that General despised the denazification program, which means that the more experienced, arrogant George Patton would have despised the younger, arrogant, Harvard indoctrinated clone Henry Kissinger. They would never have liked each other. But they murdered George patent, and they retained the German Jew Henry Kissinger after World War II. Go on. What is the RAND Corporation?
Yeah, the RAND Corporation is not merely a think tank, it is a primary gear in the permanent war state lobby, an organization forged by the military industrial complex to dictate global policy through scientific and psychographic manipulation. According to the archives, RAND functions within an interlocking grid of NGOs and foundations, including the Tavistock Institute, the Brookings Institute, the Stanford Research Institute, which we've covered. These act as a shadow government superseding the constitutional powers of the United States to implement a fascist technocracy with human husbandry as its number one priority. And those are the definitions, which I will once again read. Human husbandry. Human husbandry applies the agricultural definition of husbandry, the scientific management, milking, and selective breeding of livestock for maximum profit, to the systematic processing of the human herd within the digital enclosure of C40 smart cities. In this technocratic feedlot, populations are corralled into 15-minute containment zones, not for sustainability, but to facilitate the efficient harvesting of biodata and electromagnetic energy via the 7G body area network. The system reduces the sovereign human citizen to a biological asset, kept alive only as long as their economic yield exceeds their upkeep, after which they are discarded like spent dairy cattle. Fascism, the modern iteration of feudalism, described as an extreme authoritative, ultra-nationalistic political ideology, defined entirely by central bank authority. It subordinates the individual citizen interest to the perceived collective good of the nation or race, and is often cloaked falsely behind concepts like democracy or socialism. The fasci, which you'll find two of them right there in the House of Representatives, is the namesake, and the fasci represents the e pluribus unum, out of many, one. Interestingly enough, all of the sticks, the little twigs that are bundled together, they don't stand on their own. You can't just get one to stand, but if you bundle them up together tightly, then they stand, and that's right there. That's what that means. E pluribus unum. So the Rand Corp. Now we have the board of directors for them. Organizational leadership. These merry band of misfits.
These are the
Let's
managers.
see,
These are not the board members. These are we're
Oh,
starting out
that's correct. Yes, you're right.
the managers, and then the board members are older, typically 10 to 15 years older than the managers. But go on. You can still tell. I mean, a lot of these names are not as well known because these clowns haven't been in the milieu, in the media milieu, as long as the board members are more famous.
Well, and they all, and as you're about to see, there's just so many of them, and they literally just invent new. It's like they just invent new titles for them. I don't even really understand how so many different positions.
They all come from the same general places of banking, science, university, military, and media. And you maybe just fast forward past these knuckleheads and get to the board members to see, look how young these people are. So you're not going to learn much from them. These people don't know anything. They're just circus clowns. They're circus clowns. They're all following orders. They're all obedient. And so if you get up to the board member or the trustees level, you'll see really this is the board members, and these names will be better known for people.
So first we have Michael E. Leitner, who is the chair, the partner, Skadden, Arps, Slate, Mager and Flom, LLP, former director of the U.S.
lawyer, so slimeball lawyer.
Yeah. National Counterterrorism Center is the chair of the board at the RAND Corporation.
Take care of counterterrorism. He is counterterrorism.
Right, that's the irony.
Are 100% counterterrorism. So if you wanted to get rid of terrorism, you'd get rid of the lawyers. Right there, that would be the obvious first step. So he should suicide himself in the way that Betsy Arakawa's rodent droppings, and he would be accomplishing his objective. But he's not going to do that. he's going to continue to promote terrorism. In other words,
Well,
he's counterterrorism business, but really he's promoting terrorism.
see, that's true, but see, and to make sure that what your proposal for solving the problem, we're going to need to bring in a nice research institution to do a study on that and tell us if that's a good idea. Pretty much how it works.
Consultant who's not on the board, but we're going to follow. And then we'll say, well, it wasn't my idea. It was his idea, right? In case anything
Sure.
goes wrong. That was the whole point of McKinsey Consulting and Arthur Anderson Consulting, and now called Accenture, is that the board has already decided to do something, but they don't want to get fired. So they bring in the consultant to recommend what they already want to do. And then they accept the recommendation of the consultant who they're paying a handsome fee to. And then if anything goes wrong, then they blame the consultant. And then the board members can continue their gravy train.
Absolutely.
That's how corporate consulting works.
Yep. Next, we have Teresa Wynn Rosenbohr, Vice Chair, Executive Vice President, General Counsel, and Corporate Secretary for Home Depot. Carl Bildt, former Prime Minister of Sweden, former Minister for Foreign Affairs of Sweden. That's interesting. Okay. Kenneth Feinberg, founder and managing partner, the law offices of Kenneth R. Feinberg. Francis Fukuyama, director, Ford Dorsey's Masters in International Policy, Freeman Spologhi Institute, Stanford University. So there's Stanford.
Yeah, so you got essentially an SRII spy on the RAND Corporation board.
Pedro Jose Greer, who is the professor and founding dean at the Roseman University College of Medicine. Chuck Hagel, I wonder if he's related to Hegel. Former U.S. Secretary of Defense Karen Elliott House, former publisher of the Wall Street Journal, former senior vice president of the Dow Jones and Company, and Joel Z. Hyatt, the co-founder, chairman, and chief executive officer, Globility Inc., co-founder and former chief executive officer of Current Media LLC. That's just one. We've got much more.
Yeah. I mean, we also have James Mattis, who's the supreme commander of NATO, and we have, we've had Henry Kissinger reporting to the board of the RAND, and
there's Soledad O'Brien.
See, what you should know is that it's the same composition of the board members at RAND as our SRII, which is it's military, it's private banking, secret banking, it's media and publishing, and it's science and medicine, so-called medicine, and that they put those unholy alliances together so that they all follow the universal directives of Geneva, Switzerland, United Nations. Go on. You can continue on. It's just more repetition of what we already know, which is that it's just a bunch of puppets, and it's a hive mentality. Do you think if you're a young person like Soledad O'Brien that you're going to sass Henry Kissinger or go against James Mattis, who's a supreme commander of NATO forces? I mean, how could a young woman go against a guy who's 25 years older, who's in charge of tens of thousands of military pilots and Marines and Navy? You see how lopsided it is, that this isn't really a board of directors. This is just a show. It's just a show of clowns of different control, pacification, and control divisions like journalism and publishing and college universities, research grants, military, and medicine. And the RAND Corporation helped create Medicare and the Great Society for LBJ and the strategic Hamlet program for Vietnam and the packets of sending and receiving messaging of the internet. This is all having to do with the RAND Corporation. They're involved with electrical engineering, to human husbandry, to politics, to fake wars, to the Gulf of Tonkin invasion, to strategic electronic corridors in Vietnam, which we now have in every neighborhood in America. The science of the swarm, the terror swarm of civil unrest, that is the new enemy. The enemy is civil unrest and non-compliance and people who do not agree with real ID, who do not comply, who do not consent. We will have a terror swarm to deal with civil disobedience. Go on.
Yeah, so this is very much of interest because this is what we're seeing going on right now. So I'll go ahead and read through the slide, and then we can get some of our thoughts. The RAND Corporation pioneered the application of the information revolution to covert warfare and regime change. So the insectoid logic, RAND developed the concept of swarming, which is a military strategy based on the communication patterns of insect swarms. This involves using networked technologies such as mobile phones and social media to direct hand-picked leaders and spontaneous youth protesters to topple uncooperative governments. Color revolutions. This methodology was perfected in the removal of leaders like Slobodan Milosevic in Serbia and implemented in the Rose and Orange revolutions in Georgia and Ukraine. Domestic containment in 2008, the U.S. Army Strategic Studies Institute, drawing from these concepts, identified domestic economic shocks as a catalyst for widespread civil disobedience that would allow the Department of Defense to radically re roll for domestic population control. The hive mind psychotronic grid, RAND is identified as a critical node in the development of sophisticated mind control and behavioral modification. Common form pretext. As early as 1949, RAND issued reports claiming the Soviet Union was using hypnosis to elicit confessions, which served as the air cover for the U.S. to launch its own offensive mind control research. Sleepers, subcontractors to RAND, such as the Bureau of Social Science Research, issued technical reports on the potential to control human behavior through hypnosis, so successfully that the manipulation would be impossible to recognize. Psychic weaponry. Along with the CIA, RAND was involved in projects exploring whether psychic warriors could read or control minds from a distance, predict the future, or even move physical objects like nuclear bomb switches through photokinesis. IT, bio, and nano era, the RAND documents projected a technological revolution by the year 2020, where a bio slash nano era would begin utilizing carbon nanotubes and synthetic biology as a part of a warfare paradigm accompanied by serious psychological warfare, which is going on as we speak. My notebook reveals that the RAND Corporation does not work in isolation, but is a Jedi Knight in a war for the mind directed by reclusive strategic planners like Andrew Marshall, nicknamed Yoda, the mother of all think tanks. RAND is tutored by the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, the world's premier brainwashing establishment. Together with the Stanford Research Institute and Brookings, they analyze, record, profile, and store the mental life of the entire American population in computer memory banks. Brookings and the Alien Narrative, the Brookings Institution, a close ally of RAND, authored a 1960 report for NASA suggesting that the discovery of alien artifacts on the moon or Mars could be a front page news handled by leadership to reinforce specific values or manipulative attitudes. The Hudson Institute, founded by RAND alumnus Herman Kahn, the group explores social control and strategic deception. Interesting. Initiatives which, as leading the public down fruitless paths of research using slightly erroneous logic. We've talked about that a lot. The Jason Society, the most elite gathering of scientific minds administered by the Moderation, provides the government with the highest state technology for projects including Star Wars, defense, and submarine warfare, shrouded in unnecessary secrecy. RAND and its sister think tanks are accused of drafting the plans for the total management of the United States, effectively forming a super government. For the report from Iron Mountain, allegedly
You're,
prepared by a group involving RAND specialists, concluded that peace may never be desirable.
you got to talk slower because
Can you hear me?
your microphone is cutting out. It's only every third word we're getting. So you're going to
I
have
think
to
it's the internet.
speak slower. Your
Okay.
connection is faulty. Go on.
The Necessity of War, the report from Iron Mountain, allegedly prepared by a group involving RAND specialists, concluded that peace may never be desirable because war is the central organizing principle of society required for population control. Environmental terrorism, the report proposed using environmental threats of Armageddon, such as man made global warming, as a surrogate for war to keep the populace in a state of fear and submission. Technological branding, the shadow government creates brand confusion by using hundreds of different names for the same technologies, such as psychotronics, bioelectromagnetics, information, weapons, to prevent the public from identifying the true nature of their enslavement. And the final slide here is just a summary of some of the different groups. So, yes, these groups have pioneered as research, just enlightened research, a lot of what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, well, a lot what we saw long before you were born. It's that
True.
nothing's changed. This is what they did since their inception, since World War II. They continued World War II. World War II never ended. They just morphed into the Korean War and then the war in Iran and then the Persian War and the Afghanistan War and the war on terror and the war on drugs and the war on hunger. How we doing on the war on hunger? Have we won the war in Ethiopia, Josh?
No, but I think it's now the Hunger Games that they've decided to go with the
Yeah,
Hunger Games.
yeah, that's strategic Hamlet program, which is what the RAND Corporation took the contract from where John Ramsey went to school, Michigan State University. Also, Mitt Romney's older brother graduated there, and Mitt Romney's father graduated from Michigan State University. And John Ramsey's father graduated from there also. Michigan State University was hired to control and pacify Vietnam, and they called it Agroville and build Hunger Game districts around the farm and rice fields. And then that contract was turned over to the RAND Corporation, which promptly renamed it Strategic Hamlet Program. And that is what is in place today in the United States with your LED street lights, your ring cameras, and your smart meters, and your mesh, Terra Mesh, 7G aluminum chalk. We now have light emitting diodes, sonic weapons of ring cameras, and magnetic resonance electricity ringing in your ears 24/7. At night, you have LED lights, and during the day, you have our sun, our solar power redeployed as a human augmentation weapon to your eyeballs and skin to do Jennifer Doudna's CRISPR to electric molecular communication electricity called neuromodulation. They're electrocuting your bone marrow and injuring your DNA. Jennifer Doudna calls it gene editing to make you into a superhuman. But I'm telling you, it's turning you into a retard with no tenets of thinking, a walking zombie hard drive, walking antenna. You're just being turned into a mobile cell phone that wanders around awaiting your next command. Back to you, Josh.
I mean, it's like that. Just I understand why people might hear that and they think it's crazy. But I mean, if you think it's crazy, just go listen to the 6G white paper read through that I did, and at the final part, you'll see they put in their own paper. They put it all in their own paper. So it's like, yeah, it does sound insane, and it is insane, but it's actually like that's real.
I think it's insane. He thinks it's his job, his life duty and paycheck to do mesh network, Terra Swarm. All the chancellors of all the universities in America, they all believe in Terra Swarm. They all 100% believe in mandatory vaccines and converting humans using synthetic biology, synbio, using synthetic biology, which is aluminum and graphene and arsenic poison, to turn human beings into zombie robots. Every president of every university in the world believes in that. So if you think it's crazy, hey, the only person that's crazy is non-believers. Non-believers are crazy. Go ahead.
Unfortunately, that's true. Unfortunately,
Yes.
yeah. This is the a person who can think this up right here to
Yeah.
do this to people is not viewing the world from a lens like you or I would. This right here is just it's insanity. It really
They
is.
want
This
to turn
they've
everything into a video simulation where they can be a keyboard commando and create your reality by typing in the algorithm that they can have a terrorist event, a bombing in your subway system, or they can create a global pandemic, pandemic, right? You could never do that in real life, but you can do it on a computer video game. And that's what the Matrix and Mendacity is all about, is taking real life and turning it into a meta life, which means fake, means synthetic biology, it means molecular engineering of humans, so that people believe in poppycock, balderdash, and mendacity. They don't believe in the physical world anymore. They believe in a virtual meta dead world of the metaverse. Back to you, Josh.
Yeah, so I got a moment because I know you had been talked to me a little bit about this, and I got a chance to add the slides in. The RAND Corporation was featured in the Hollywood film Doctor Strangelove as the Bland Corporation. So why don't you explain that one? Because I've only seen little bits of the movie.
Well, as one of my foundational films, Wizard of Oz, Doctor Strangelove, The Swiss Conspiracy, 3 Days of the Condor, The International. These are, in my opinion, foundational films if you want to grasp how the matrix of mendacity really works, how it operates, how it entraps and enslaves the people who take, people like Andrea Mitchell seriously, or took Seymour Hersh seriously, or took, people like Rachel Madcow or Mike Wallace or Walter Cronkite or Dan Rather seriously, or Geraldo or Barbara Walters. Those are all fraudulent idolatry, straw people who have no original ideas on their own. Anyway, in this film, it's a prepper film. The star of the film is Peter Sellers, who was murdered at the Dorchester Hotel in the Mayfair district of London later on, across the street from where Cass Elliot was murdered. Anyway, Peter Sellers plays numerous characters. He plays an Air Force general who launches a nuclear strike against the Soviet Union. He also plays the president, the clueless president of the United States. He plays Dr. Strangelove himself. He also plays a Royal Air Force general who is trying to get the general to recall the squadron with the B-52 bombers with the nuclear bombs. So Peter Sellers plays four characters: a Royal Air Force general, and then Jack Ripper, who launches, he's United States Air Force NATO commander, who launches the strike against the Soviet Union, Russia. And he plays the clueless president of the United States. And he plays Dr. Strangelove, who is a German scientist, Nazi, who is awaiting the return of Adolf Hitler, who helps design the Doomsday Machine. The Doomsday Machine is a part of MAD, MAD, Mutually Assured Destruction, which is referred to as the Bland Corporation invented this foolproof system that if the Russians had nuclear weapons and the Chinese had nuclear weapons and the NATO forces had nuclear weapons, we could all be assured of mutual destruction if anyone ever fired their weapons at each other. Then we'd all fire and we'd all die. And then George C. Scott, who is my favorite character, he plays General Turgison, United States Army. He says, "Mr. President, may I speak now?" "Yes, General, you have the floor." And he says, "Mr. President, we are rapidly approaching a window which is quickly closing, where we have a choice to make: two regrettable and unfortunate choices, but distinguishable choices. One, where we have complete human annihilation and everyone is dead. And the other choice, where we have 30 to 50 million people killed, tops, depending on the breaks. It just depends if we deploy our underground bunkers. And there, indeed, we need to be concerned with a mine shaft gap with the Russians. Back to you, Josh.
I like that. Thank you. You had the context that was needed to explain that, because it's just the movie. I've seen it, but not much. So I probably should watch it again, and maybe I will.
My brothers and I, we couldn't stop laughing. We thought it was so hilarious. But that's the situation we find ourselves in today through no fault of our own. And I don't think it's funny anymore. I thought it was funny when I was a kid. And now I don't think it's funny as an adult.
Yeah. What year did that movie come out? Do you know?
1962.
1960.
Kennedy had his head blown off.
Wow, that's insane.
It was the movie that was done simultaneously to Dr. Strangelove was The Manchurian Candidate, which is about MK Ultra mind control, CIA turning people into assassins.
That's crazy. And when you look into it, a lot of that. So we all know that the MK Ultra research was supposedly destroyed, and they just got rid of it. So
no, they canceled. Yeah, they terminated the program because it was so successful.
Or they move it into a research group, so it's done at a university or something like that.
They never terminate any program ever.
Yeah, it's moved into the how did you say it? The black and
gray latitudes.
Yes, exactly that. That's where they move all of these projects into. Let's see. That was the last slide, so I'll read this last slide here. It talks, this, I think this was probably from the email you sent me. Even in the late 1940s and early 1950s, long before Sputnik, which was the satellite, the RAND project was secretly recommending to the US government a major effort to design a human-made satellite that would take photographs from space, and the rockets to put such a satellite into orbit. RAND was not the first think tank, but during the 1960s, it was the first to be regularly referred to as a think tank. Accordingly, RAND served as the prototype for the modern definition of that term. In the early 1990s, RAND established a European branch to serve clients across the public, private, and third sectors. That's a big deal, the third sectors.
Like Brussels, Belgium.
Yeah, including governments, charities, and corporations. RAND Europe is the European arm of RAND, and like its main branch, it is a non-profit policy research organization dedicated to improving decision-making through the evidence-based research and analysis. RAND Europe's stated mission is to improve policy and decision-making through rigorous, independent research. RAND Europe is incorporated in and has offices in Cambridge, The Hague, and Brussels. And that's the last slide.
Just to supplement that, you should know that the Stanford Research Institute International, SRII, is the latest incarnation name that they go by, SRII. Mm-hmm. And the RAND Corporation, they were created more or less within about a year of each other, back 1946, 47, 48. And they have equivalent amounts of employees. The RAND Corporation has 1,850 employees across about 13 offices worldwide. And SRII has 13 offices worldwide and 2,100 employees. The main difference is that the RAND Corporation has a university in New Orleans called the RAND Public Policy School, where you can get a diploma. And in the case of SRII, they're already a part of Stanford University. They're on Stanford-owned land that was granted after they booted the Ohlone Indians off. So they're already affiliated with the University of Stanford. But they have a corporation where they make weapons. And I provided a link in some of the footnotes. You'll find a Smartov company Snaroff company is owned wholly by SRII, which creates an obvious conflict of interest where you're collecting consulting fees to advise governments of which weapons to buy. At the same time, you're making weapons that you're going to be recommending. Sounds kind of like you're a salesman and you're doing a commission sale instead of an independent. Get rid of this word independent. There's no independence at RAND. You've got Lockheed Martin is on your board of directors at the SRI. The military contractors sit on the board of directors and our consultants do these boards. There's no independence whatsoever. The people who make the weapons are the same people who recommend their own weapons. They just talk about how to deploy them and apply them. The RAND Corporation collects about $530 million a year in consulting fees. The Stanford research collects about the same amount of money, $525 million a year. So it works out to about $275,000 per employee, or 300 grand per employee is about the average revenue. But that's deceptive because you know that they're directing and influencing the employment of tens of thousands of people who work for Raytheon Missile Guidance, for Hughes Space and Communication Satellite Business, TRW Satellite Business, for Bell Nokia Labs, for Bell Telephone Signaling, for all the contractors like NVIDIA and Palantir and Oracle Database Software and CRISPR Therapeutics and Jennifer Doudna. They're influencing the employment at all the university campuses for professors and for job promises of jobs to the PhD doctorate students are being heavily influenced by the Tavistock Institute, the RAND Corporation, the Stanford Research Institute International. And it's a whole ecosystem of a secret government operating between the black and gray latitudes of one world governance out of Geneva, Switzerland. Back to you, Josh.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we did a good job at. It was good that we had the boards and all of their like little biographies and whatnot, because it really shows you how these corporate or NGOs, these think tanks, whatever, are like a layer behind what you see in the public. And so, okay, I've got a good analogy. So you know how at like Disney they have like the tunnels for the characters to get around, and you're not supposed to see them.
And they have a jail. They have a jail. They have Disney jail.
And so this is kind of like the tunnels behind all of these groups that allow them to get around in the revolving door, and they're always over here and then they're over. That's how they're getting around and giving them policy, independent policy or whatever. They do it through these groups are very important, and people should really talk about them more than they do now, because these groups are much more important than any political party. So.
That was how William Randolph Hearst and Marion Davies entertained the guests at the Hearst Castle. They had a grand ballroom for their hijinks night, for dancing, music, and drinking. And they had a bedroom, kind of like a safe house, above the roof of this like 40-foot tall, it's a 40-foot tall ceiling in this. I've been in the room, so I can speak from, it has a parquet floor and it has wood paneling walls. And what they do is they play music and there's dancing, and then they turn all the lights out and they stop the music. So everyone is in the darkness with no windows in this big room. Then they give it about, 60 seconds, and then they turn the lights on, and voila, in the center of the room stands William Randolph Hearst, and on his arm is his girlfriend, not wife, his mistress, Marion Davies, who got the name of the street above the Sharon Tate murder scene. Davies Drive is directly above where Sharon Tate was killed, and Abigail Folger. Davies Drive, named after Marion Davies, who would appear like a rabbit being pulled out of a hat, because, see, they turned the lights off so you didn't see that there's a spiral staircase from the roof down to the wood paneling, and there's a secret door which opened, and then they were guided to the center of the ballroom. The door was closed, the lights turned on, and there's our host and hostess at this wonderful party above San Simeon and the Pacific Ocean, the Hearst Castle, that has a zoo and an indoor swimming pool and a Roman outdoor swimming pool and bungalows. And it's a Paris. It's it's 100,000 acres of, it's a quarter of a million acres of land, which they ended up leasing a big chunk of that to the United States Army, NATO, at Fort Hunter Liggett. And the Mission San Antonio, Father Junipero Serra, is on the property also, along with the zoo and the ballroom. So this is Hollywood Svengali magic, where you take two hosts, the head of publishing, newspaper business, and his girlfriend, a Hollywood actress, and they appear out of nowhere in the middle of a dance floor. But it's not magic, it's mechanics. But to the guests who are invited, it's a magical moment.
So the first couple steps, you focus the attention somewhere, and then you have to enhance the awareness of your attention by a shock or an immediate experience. And in the moment of shock, when the mind reaches out for like what happened, then you give them a new story. And so the lights shut off, and that startles everybody.
And the music begins again.
They're looking around. They bring the person in, and then you're kind of absorbed into it before it's over. You're already going with the new narrative. That's the idea.
Right. And Hollywood has a mantra song. I mean, they have many songs, but one is, that's entertainment. And entertainment is when you capture the attention of your enemy and you focus their attention to you, but then you can be stealing their property behind their back because they're so riveted by that's entertainment. Or people like Bob Hope said, just go out there and entertain the hell out of them. But that's a military term, because if you can distract your enemy, you can easily defeat your enemy. Napoleon knew that. George Patton knew that. You set up diversionary attacks, you avert their eyes and ears, and then you attack from the rear, where they do not expect your main thrust to come. Go ahead, Josh.
I was going to say that reminded me of something else. The word to like fascinate, like something fascinates you. That comes from the same root as the fasci, because it means to bundle up or to wrap. So, like if you're tying somebody up, fascinating them, and to bundle and tie together.
It's like an enslavement tactic.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But that's what we have with Henry Kissinger and Daniel Ellsberg and Soledad O'Brien and the other character I want to make sure everyone's heard of is Janet Napolitano. She's going to bring together UC Berkeley with the Obama administration and the RAND. She's a board member of the RAND Corporation. Mm-hmm. And she is a complete put together clone Italian Napolitano. But I mean, Anthony Napolitano, he's probably related to her. He's a total clown who pimps out the Constitution, voting, and our criminal court system, which is 100% maritime law corrupt. So you can't believe anything that comes out of a pie hole of someone by the name of Napolitano, okay? Because they're going to be lying like a rug. All right, so that's my point today, is that magic and the trance of the Svengali to fascinate and entertain and transfix your attention span, is how you disable the tenets of thinking. Because what fear and surprise sneak attacks divert your attention away from focusing laser guided on the human augmentation, Swiss bank authority, Geneva, Switzerland, human husbandry. And if you're not focused on that, you are being manipulated by NATO forces military. Because you'll notice, if you're not talking about human augmentation, molecular engineering, DNA damaging, gene editing, CRISPR, neuromodulation, then you've completely missed what's going on in our world. The Super Bowl doesn't matter. The NFL playoffs don't matter. NBA basketball doesn't matter. Donald Trump doesn't matter. ICE agents in your cities don't matter. those are fear techniques to prep everybody, to exhaust them for when they're going to tank your currency and you're going to go to universal basic income tokens, and everyone's going to look around like, what happened? I'm telling you what's happening. And it's going to be happening within 36 months. It's going to happen quick like a bunny rabbit. And, you're going to get many more messages this year of as we march toward real ID to get in to a liquor store to buy cigarettes or to buy gas, you're going to be locked in or locked out depending on your obedience and compliance with the biometrics, the token mark of the beast, your DNA, your bird flu. Bird flu is probably coming, and then there'll be mandatory lockdowns. You should expect that, especially in Manhattan, New York, especially in Chicago, there's not really anyone working in San Francisco anymore, so they could lock San Francisco down. Who cares? Nobody's there. It's a ghost town. All right, back to you, Josh.
I think that really sums it up. And one thing about that is that I one question I set out to answer regarding all of that is how much how much of it goes back to that, and I've answered that question, and pretty much everything we're seeing goes back to, in one way or the other, the augmentation and husbandry of human population, because when you have people who are augmented, it might explain the weird behavior, the unexplainable behavior, and just what the hell's going on right now. And
Everyone's
thinking,
got ADD, right? They've given, which is senile dementia, attention deficit disorder. There's not a millimeter's worth of difference between being diagnosed with ADD and being diagnosed with senile dementia. It's the same thing. It's like saying that COVID is the flu when it's really Havana syndrome radiation poisoning. COVID is radiation poisoning. It's light weaponry, sound weaponry, and magnetic resonance ringing in your ears. The symptoms of Havana syndrome are nausea, disorientation, headaches, ringing in your ear. Okay, well, that's the diagnosis of the flu. That's the diagnosis of radiation poisoning. That takes you to Dr. Strangelove, who wanted to go underground to repopulate the world because on the surface, everyone would die from radiation poisoning of nuclear weaponry. But we have that today with LED streetlights, smart meters, ring cameras, imbecile neighbors volunteering for cancer by installing ring cameras in close proximity to their bedrooms. You've got to be dumber than a box of hammers, and using Bluetooth and Zigbee to have hands-free driving and buy an electric car. You've lost your marbles. You are cuckoo for Cocoa Pops if you're driving an electric car or electric bicycle or electric motorcycle. You're an imbecile. You've already lost your mind. You have no tenets of thinking. You have no idea what's going on in the world. And you're on your way to a Donald Trump Freedom City, cognitive smart city, cremation oven ceremony coming soon. Thank you.
I think we ended on that. What do you say? All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you saw and learned something more than you knew before. We have a lot of information out. I'll put all of the notes and stuff together so people can review it.
This was number 8, right?
This was number 8.
Episode number 8.
Yes. All right. All righty, guys. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you next week. Take care.